The air in San Francisco's Chinatown was unusually heavy on the night of the Hungry Ghost Festival. Red lanterns swung lazily above the narrow alleys, casting trembling shadows across cracked pavement and shuttered shops. A low mist slithered in from the bay, coiling around stone lion statues and the feet of passers-by who moved quickly, whispering blessings in Mandarin under their breath. Ethan Caldwell stood outside a century-old herbal shop with a camera slung around his neck and a notebook in his pocket. The store was tucked between a dim sum joint and a shrine no one dared enter after dark. The peeling sign above read, "Zhong's Remedies," and its windows were fogged from within, hiding the secrets inside. He had come for a story. Every year, on the 15th night of the 7th lunar month, whispers filled Chinatown, stories of doors opening between the living and the dead. Ethan didn't believe in ghosts, but he believed in stories that sold. The door creaked open with a chime. Mei-Ling stood behind the counter, dressed in a deep green cheongsam. Her black hair was tied into a perfect bun, her gaze sharp yet distant. "You're late." Ethan stepped inside, shivering slightly. The air smelled of ginseng, dried chrysanthemum, and something metallic, blood-like. Traffic, or maybe fate. "No one jokes about fate tonight," she said, handing him a cup of bitter tea. "Not when the gates are open. You really believe the dead walk tonight?" "Not walk, watch." Outside, the mist thickened. 2 blocks away, Officer Derek Woods was on patrol. He scoffed at the paper offerings burning in buckets on the sidewalks. "Fire hazard," he muttered, tapping the ashes with his boot. An old man hissed something in Cantonese, throwing a folded paper effigy toward him. "Relax," Derek muttered. "No ghost's gonna ticket you." His radio buzzed with static, then silence, then a woman's whisper, low and clear. "Don't look back." Derek froze. He spun. No one. The alley was empty, but the lanterns had stopped swaying. The air was still. Then he heard it. Bare footsteps. Behind him. Back in the shop, Ethan flipped through a brittle book Mei-Ling had laid out. It chronicled deaths from past Hungry Ghost nights, murders, disappearances. Every 49 years, a pattern emerged. The same names, the same faces. "But this is 2025, Ethan said. "The last cycle was 1976, Mei-Ling whispered. "And the one before that, 1927. A bell rang. The front door opened, though no one stood there. The temperature dropped. "What the hell?" Ethan backed up. "They remember you," Mei-Ling said. "From the last time." "That's impossible. I wasn't even born." She looked up. Her eyes shimmered with something ancient. "But your soul was." Outside, the mist crept closer, swirling like fingers reaching for a door that had just begun to open again. The wind howled outside like a sigh from another world. Ethan stared at Mei-Ling in confusion, but a gnawing sense of familiarity stirred inside him, like memories from another lifetime brushing the surface of his consciousness. "Do you feel like you've been here before?" Mei-Ling asked, her voice like tea smoke. "Yes," Ethan replied hoarsely. "But I don't know why." Mei-Ling led him to an old mirror covered with a red cloth in the corner of the shop. She pulled the fabric down. The mirror showed no reflection of Ethan, nothing at all. "This is a spirit mirror. It only shows the soul, not the flesh." Ethan stepped back, his heart pounding. He felt cold in his bones. "Am I a ghost?" "No, but you're carrying a fragment of a soul that died during the Hungry Ghost Night 49 years ago. And this year it returns." The shop door slammed shut. A shadow darted past the foggy window. The bell chimed, but no one entered. Meanwhile, Derek ran through the alley, breathless. Behind him, the footsteps continued, never fast, but never stopping. He turned down a narrow street, then into a dead end. No way out. He turned. No one. But on the brick wall, wet black handprints, small like a child's, marked the surface. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. A message. No number. "You're next." The screen went black. When it lit up again, his wallpaper had changed. It was a photo of Derek, standing alone, except behind him was a little girl in a red cheongsam, eyeless. Ethan and Mei-Ling left the shop and headed to the boarding house run by Mrs. Korn. The old woman sat before a small ancestral altar, lighting incense and mumbling to herself. "You're here," she said without turning. "You thought you escaped your past life, but no one escapes the hungry ghost cycle." "What do you know about me?" Ethan asked. "I watched you die, you and 4 others. Coincidentally, they've all returned, just like 49 years ago." Mei-Ling froze. 4 others? "Yes," Mrs. Ingyo nodded. "A police officer, a shopkeeper, a journalist, an orphan, and the mirror keeper." Ethan stared into her eyes, feeling an invisible hand tightening around his heart. Outside, the mist had swallowed the neighborhood, and in the room's mirror, a figure stood behind Ethan. But when he turned, there was no one there. San Francisco, Chinatown. Summer of 1976. The air was heavy with incense and fear. The full moon of the 7th lunar month hung over Grant Avenue, shrouded in mist. To outsiders, it was just another ghost month. To those who gathered in the abandoned warehouse at the edge of Chinatown, it was the night to end a curse, or feed it. 5 figures entered the warehouse carrying bundles of paper offerings, jugs of rice wine, and a tall standing mirror framed in black lacquer. Inspector Lau, a policeman with tired eyes. Mr. Zhang, a shopkeeper known for his herbal remedies. Madam Wei, an elderly fortune teller with trembling hands. A young man, Ethan, though not the Ethan of today, but his past self. 19, uncertain, chosen by fate rather than faith. And the orphan girl, Min, barefoot, silent, clutching a red paper lantern. They stood in a circle around the mirror. "This is the seal," Madam Wei whispered. 5 souls to bind the hungry dead. 5 anchors to keep the wall from breaking. "Why the child?" Ethan asked, voice cracking. He looked at Min, who stared at the ground. "Because innocence carries weight," Madam Wei said. "The hungry dead demand balance." Mr. Zhang lit sticks of incense, planting them into a bowl of rice. Inspector Lau unfolded a paper scroll, its calligraphy sharp as blades. Ethan shifted nervously, sweat dripping down his back. The mirror stood in the center, reflecting all of them. Its surface shimmered faintly under the candlelight. Madam Wei raised her hands. "We call upon the restless. We give you vessel, name, passage. We bind you to silence until the next moon." The others repeated her words, voices overlapping. Min held her lantern high. The flame inside flickered, then surged blue. The air cracked. Whispers rose from the corners of the warehouse. The walls trembled. The candles guttered. Ethan's stomach twisted. In the mirror, their reflections did not match. Inspector Lau's eyes bled. Mr. Zhang's skin blistered. Ethan's reflection turned away, and Min's reflection screamed. The ritual collapsed. The scroll caught fire. The incense toppled. The mirror quaked, lines of red spreading across its surface like veins. A blast of heat knocked them backward. Ethan stumbled to his feet. Smoke billowed. Beams groaned. The warehouse roof caught fire. "Get out!" Inspector Lau shouted. Madam Wei tried to steady the mirror. "No, we must finish. The circle isn't—" The floor cracked open. Black smoke poured upward like a living thing. Ethan grabbed Min's hand. "We have to go." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I was meant to stay." The fire surged. A beam fell, trapping her. "Ethan!" she cried. He tried. He pushed. The beam didn't move. Behind him, the door to the alley still stood open. Inspector Lau pulled at his shoulder. "It's too late. Save yourself." Ethan's chest heaved. He looked at Min, her terrified eyes, her small hands reaching. And he ran. He slammed the door shut. Her scream echoed through the flames. Outside, the warehouse burned through the night. By dawn, nothing remained but ash, twisted beams, and the whisper that something had gone terribly wrong. 4 bodies were never recovered. Only one boy staggered into the dawn light, coughing, alive. Ethan. But survival carried its own curse. The wall at the edge of Chinatown bore a new scar, a blackened mark where souls had fled, but never passed on. And so the cycle began. Every 49 years, the wall would whisper. Every 49 years, the mirror would call, until someone chose differently. The next morning arrived gray and silent. No birds sang, no footsteps echoed in the alleyways. It was as if all of Chinatown had paused, watching, waiting. A silence so complete it felt like something had been removed from the world. Ethan awoke drenched in sweat. The dream had returned. A narrow red corridor, endless, lined with lanterns that wept wax like tears. He had been running, always running, and someone or something was chasing him. But this time there was more. Fire, a sudden burst of orange and heat, screams, a wooden door slamming shut, and a child's face behind it, crying out, her mouth open in terror. Her eyes locked on his. He sat upright, heart pounding, throat dry. The image lingered, too vivid to be a dream. It felt like a memory, except it wasn't his, or was it? He pulled on his jacket and stepped out into the dim hallway. Mrs. Ngo was gone. In her place, a trail of burnt joss paper led from the altar to the front door, fluttering like scorched petals, ash still clinging to the air. Outside, Mei-Ling stood quietly beneath a fraying red lantern, her hands clasped behind her back. "She left before dawn," Mei-Ling said. "She said you'd wake with the fire." "She was right," Ethan said, voice hoarse. "Was it the girl?" "Yes, and fire. Always fire." "That's not a dream," Mei-Ling said. "That's residue. Echoes from before." "Before what?" "Before you survived." And they walked through Chinatown in silence. Doors were shut, window altars lit with incense, red talismans painted freshly on thresholds. Ethan noticed people watching him, not with fear but with pity, as if they knew something he didn't. Back inside Zhang's Remedies, Mei-Ling opened a lacquered box from beneath the counter. Inside were 5 obsidian tokens, each carved with a different animal: fox, dragon, snake, monkey, and moth. "This is the seal of the cycle," she said. "Each of us corresponds to one. You were the fox." Ethan touched the fox-shaped token. It was unnaturally warm. "What does that mean?" "In 1976, Mei-Ling said, her voice barely above a whisper, 5 souls were caught in a failed ritual. A fire was meant to banish the angry dead. It consumed the living instead. 4 perished. 1 escaped." Ethan's breath caught. "I was the one who survived." "Yes," she said, "but not without cost." Suddenly, the shop bell rang. Not a chime, but a deep, wet gong, like something striking underwater. Derek stumbled in, pale, drenched in sweat. "I saw her again," he said. "She stood outside my window all night, just stood there, not moving." Mei-Ling exchanged a glance with Ethan, then turned back to Derek. "We need to complete the circle," she said. "But first, we must find the 5th. "The orphan?" Ethan asked. "Yes, if she's reborn, she's the last key." A noise from the back interrupted. Them, a strange, reversed crackling, like fire unburning. They turned toward the mirror. It was trembling. It had begun. The fog never lifted. By evening, Chinatown resembled a snow globe sealed in silence and ash. The red glow of lanterns burned faintly through the mist, like watching eyes. Inside Zhang's remedies, Mei-Ling knelt in the center of the room, surrounded by a circle of sandalwood incense. Derek stood guard by the front, and Ethan paced restlessly. Laid out between them were the 5 obsidian tokens, arranged like a compass. Each one seemed heavier now, as though pulsing with memory. Ethan stared at them. So in 1976, the 5 weren't just random. They were chosen. Each was born under a different sign. Each carried a fragment of the curse, Mei-Ling said. But one carried more than the others. Min, Ethan whispered. The orphan, Mei-Ling nodded. She was the vessel, the one meant to hold the cycle's hunger. Derek frowned. Why a child? Because the dead don't bargain with power. They bargain with innocence. Later that night, Ethan wandered through the alleys, searching. His memories were fragmented, flashes of smoke, crying, red light, and in all of them, that child's face appeared. He questioned street vendors, shrine keepers, and even fortune tellers. Most averted their gaze. One old man said, "Children disappear in ghost months. Some never return. Some return changed." It was near the abandoned opera house that he saw her. A girl sat on the stone steps, holding a paper lantern gone dark. Her red dress fluttered in the breeze. Her shoes were scuffed. Her eyes, when she looked up, were bottomless. "What's your name?" Ethan asked gently. She stared for a moment, then answered, "Min." The name echoed inside his skull like a strike of thunder. He brought her back to the shop. Mei-Ling went pale. "That's her. That's the one." Min didn't speak. She stood still, her gaze flickering between the obsidian tokens and the mirror. Derek closed the shop doors. "We don't have much time." Mei-Ling placed each person at a point of the compass. The air thickened. The mirror fogged from the inside. "We must complete the circle," she said, "or the cycle will do it for us." As the incense burned, the tokens vibrated. Min reached out and touched the fox. "You were the one who ran," she said to Ethan. Her voice was soft, but carried an eerie weight. "Do you remember me?" he asked. She nodded. "I remember everyone who left." The mirror began to bleed. A red line trickled down the glass. Then another. Then more. Ethan turned to Mei-Ling. "What happens now?" "Now," she said, "you face what you did." Min looked at him. "This isn't the first time I died, but maybe this is the first time someone stayed." And with that, the mirror shattered, and the screaming began again. The screaming didn't sound like a voice. It sounded like all voices, shattering, rising, echoing through the walls of Zhang's remedies as the mirror cracked into 1,000 splinters. Every shard trembled with memories not yet resolved. Ethan shielded Min with his arms, backing away from the mirror. But the blood kept dripping. From the frame, the glass, the air. The incense circle flared red, then died. All that remained was silence. Mei-Ling stood in trance. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Her eyes rolled back, showing white. Derek rushed to her side, grabbing her shoulders. "Mei-Ling, say something." She gasped suddenly, then exhaled in a voice not her own. The door was closed, the fire consumed, the debt remains. Ethan froze. "What does it mean?" Derek asked, stepping back. The voice continued. "4 fled, 1 screamed, none returned. The fox survives, but shadows remember." Min stepped forward from the circle, now standing between Ethan and the mirror. Her face was calm, too calm for a child. Her fingers touched the nearest shard. "I remember the heat," she said. "The smoke, the silence when no one came." Ethan looked at her, shaking. "You were in there, in that warehouse." She turned slowly. "And so were you." Suddenly, Ethan was no longer in the shop. He stood inside a burning warehouse. Flames licked the wooden beams above. Screams echoed down the corridor. A door creaked at the far end. A younger version of himself, barely 19, staggered forward, blood running from his forehead. He looked over his shoulder. Behind him, Min lay trapped under fallen beams. Her tiny hands reached for him. "Ethan, please help me!" He hesitated. Smoke choked the air. Outside, someone yelled his name. He turned. He ran. The door slammed behind him. Min's scream was the last thing he heard before waking. He collapsed to his knees in the shop, gasping. "I left her," he whispered. "I ran." Min nodded gently. "You survived." "I didn't." Derek looked between them, stunned. "This whole cycle, it's because of that?" Mei-Ling, now herself again, stepped forward. "It's not about punishment. It's about acknowledgement. Regret without action is just memory. Regret with courage becomes redemption." Ethan looked at the mirror. The shards began to float. "So what do I do?" "You go back," Mei-Ling said. "You return to the fire, but this time you choose differently." The largest shard hovered before him, glowing red. "Enter the memory," Min whispered, "where the fire never ended, where I still wait." Ethan stepped forward. The shard enveloped him, and he fell into time, into flame. The warehouse again, the door again, the beam trapping Min again, her eyes wide with trust. "Don't leave me." This time, Ethan ran to her. He lifted the beam. He carried her through fire. And just as they reached the exit, the flames roared up. He turned and pushed her through the door. But he stayed behind. Back in the shop, the mirror shards collapsed to the floor. Min opened her eyes. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "He stayed," she whispered. Mei-Ling smiled sadly. "Then the cycle is broken." And for the first time, the mirror was truly silent. The fire had ended, but Ethan did not awaken. Not yet. Instead, he stood in a place between worlds. It was not the warehouse, not Zhang's remedies, not Chinatown. The air shimmered like heat over asphalt. Shadows bent at impossible angles. It was a place that was neither memory nor dream, but something deeper, the seam between. Ethan looked down. His hands were whole, unburned. The shard of mirror glowed faintly in his palm. From the darkness ahead, Min appeared. But she was different now. She was not the coughing, terrified child of the warehouse. She was radiant, her red dress shifting into white. Her eyes, once black with sorrow, now held something gentler. "Where are we?" Ethan asked. "The space between flames," she said. Her voice echoed as though spoken in many layers. "The place where souls decide." Decide what? Whether to cling or to leave. Shapes stirred around them. Figures began to emerge, translucent, fragile, yet heavy with sorrow. Ethan recognized them instantly. The others, the 4 who had died with Min in 1976, the shopkeeper, the policeman, the fortune teller, Derek's past self. All of them carried the scars of the fire, charred hands, hollow eyes, ash clinging to their hair. Yet none accused him. They simply watched. Ethan's chest tightened. "I should have stayed with you all. I should have—" The shopkeeper raised a hand, silencing him. "Regret is the first door, but regret alone cannot free us." The fortune teller stepped forward, her voice like wind through dry leaves. "We were trapped not only by fire, but by forgetting. Each cycle, the living forgot our names. Each cycle, the wall grew stronger." Derek's past self looked at Ethan, then at the shard. "You remember now. That is why you were chosen. Not because you survived, but because you could not forget." Min approached, her small feet silent against the shifting floor. "I was angry once," she said. "I thought the fire was your betrayal, but I see now. It was more than you. It was the cycle, the hunger of the wall, the blindness of the living." Ethan fell to his knees. "Then what am I supposed to do? I can't change the past." "No," Min whispered, kneeling beside him. "But you can change the remembering." The space began to tremble. Light flickered in the distance, pulsing like a heartbeat. A sound rose, a low moan, not of pain but of longing. The children, dozens of them, their faces pale, their eyes searching. They gathered at the edges of the space, watching Ethan with quiet intensity. Min turned to them. "He stayed. He remembers. He carries us." The children nodded, their outlines growing sharper. Ethan's throat burned. "I'll remember all of you. Every name, every face. I swear it." The wall of children parted, revealing a door of pure flame. Min looked at him. "Then your path continues. The warehouse was your guilt. The wall is your duty." The other 4 souls stepped closer. The shopkeeper placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "We do not need you to die for us. We need you to tell the truth." The policeman spoke, his voice steady. "Memory is stronger than fire." The fortune teller leaned close. "When you wake, listen to the wall. It will whisper, not of anger, but of hunger. Feed it names and it will break." Min took Ethan's hand, small but steady. "And when the time comes, let us go. Don't hold us here with guilt. Hold us with memory." The door of fire widened. The children began to step through, one by one, their bodies dissolving into light. The forgotten souls followed. The shopkeeper gave Ethan one last nod. Derek's past self placed a hand over Ethan's heart before fading. Finally, Min lingered. She smiled, the first true smile he had ever seen from her. "You stayed. That is enough." Then she turned and walked through the fire. The space collapsed. The air folded inward, shadows crumbling. Ethan felt himself pulled backward, through memory, through silence, through breath. When he opened his eyes, he was back on the floor of Zhang's remedies. The tokens still glowed faintly. Mei-Ling and Derek were bent over him, but something was different now. The shard in his hand was no longer cracked. It was smooth, clear, reflecting only his own face, and for the first time he felt no shame looking into it. Mei-Ling touched his forehead. "What did you see?" Ethan's voice was hoarse but steady. "The space between flames, where they chose to leave, where I chose to stay." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Then the wall will call next." Ethan stood slowly, his legs trembling but firm. He looked toward the back of the shop where the alley waited. He heard it then, a faint hum, not screams, not moans, a whisper, calling, and he knew the cycle was not over. Not yet. The shop was dark. Zhang's remedies, once filled with the scent of herbs and flickering candles, had turned cold and silent. The air was thick, not just with incense, but with something older, grief, memory, the kind that clung to the bones of a place. Ethan stood alone in the center, the shattered mirror at his feet. Around him, incense coils hung like snakes from the rafters, unmoving despite the wind that howled outside. He held the largest shard of glass. Min's reflection stared back at him from within the shard, but it wasn't a reflection. It was her. Her image moved independently, eyes searching his, not accusing, just waiting. "You came back," she whispered. Ethan sank to his knees. "I remember now. I left you." Her head tilted slightly. "And now? Now I won't." Mei-Ling and Derek burst into the room, out of breath, eyes wide. The temperature had dropped at least 10 degrees. "It's happening," Mei-Ling said, voice tight. "The cycle is reaching its hinge. Either it resets, or it ends." Derek stared at the mirror shards. What does he have to do? Face it, all of it, Min's voice echoed from the glass. Not just the memory, the moment. Ethan looked at Mei-Ling. Can you help me go back? She hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but it will hurt. I deserve it. The ritual began again. They placed the 5 obsidian tokens around Ethan's body, forming a pentacle on the wooden floor. Each token pulsed with heat, as if alive. Incense smoke curled upward, forming vague shapes: fox, dragon, monkey, snake, moth. Mei-Ling chanted softly in an old dialect Ethan could barely follow. Derek held the mirror shard over Ethan's chest. Ethan closed his eyes. The world tilted. Memory came not as a vision, but as immersion. Ethan stood in the warehouse again. The fire was real. It bit at the walls, licked at the beams above. The heat was unbearable. Smoke clawed down his throat. He was young again, barely 19. A boy, not a man, scared, bleeding. And Min was there, trapped under a fallen support beam, coughing, calling his name. Ethan, help me, please. He remembered this moment, the confusion, the screaming outside, the voices urging him to run, the terror that said, if you try, you'll die too. And so, he ran. He had run. He felt the old shame surge like a wave, but this time he moved. He didn't turn. He didn't run. He stumbled over the debris and fell beside her. I've got you, he said, coughing. Hold on. She looked at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. He pushed against the beam. It didn't move. Help me, he screamed into the flames. No one answered. Then Derek was there. Not Derek from the present, but Derek as a past self. One of the 5, stronger, faster. He grabbed Ethan's arm and pulled the beam up just enough. Min crawled free. Go, Derek shouted. Ethan pushed her toward the exit, but the fire exploded around them. Suddenly, time fractured. The warehouse fell away. Now Ethan stood in a place made of shadow and firelight, a liminal space, a memory between deaths. The air buzzed with whispers. Min appeared again, this time whole, older. Her red dress gone, replaced by white. You stayed, she said. I did. But part of you still hasn't forgiven yourself. Ethan swallowed. Because part of me still died that night. Good, she whispered. That means you're human. Back in the shop, Ethan's body began to convulse. Mei-Ling steadied him, sweat rolling down her brow. He's resisting something, she said. Derek clutched the mirror shard. Should we stop? No. He's almost there. In the liminal space, Ethan saw them. The other 4, the ones who had died that night. Not just Derek, not just Min, but the others. Shopkeeper, officer, fortune teller, all standing behind Min. Each bore signs of how they had died. Burns, smoke, cracked eyes. Ethan fell to his knees. I'm sorry, I was scared. I didn't know. The old man stepped forward. No one blames a child for fearing death, but now you are no longer a child. The woman said, the cycle was never punishment. It was the weight of your own soul refusing to forget. Min touched his face, and now you remember. Light filled the void. A gong rang out, not in the shop, but inside Ethan's skull. When he opened his eyes, he was back. The mirror had reformed. Min was gone. The tokens lay still. Mei-Ling wept silently beside him. Derek stood watch, pale but solid. Ethan rose slowly. Every bone in his body ached, but there was something new in his chest, quiet. She's free, Mei-Ling said. Ethan nodded. They all are. He looked into the mirror. No blood, no handprints, just his reflection, aged, clear-eyed, whole. It's done. That night, Ethan returned to the alley where it had all begun. The fog had lifted. Lanterns glowed steadily overhead. He held the shard in his hand, now smooth as crystal. He buried it beneath the bricks. As he stood, the wind passed behind him, warm. And for the first time in 49 years, the alley was silent. No barefoot steps, no crying, just peace. The wall was still there, a cracked surface behind Zhang's remedies, graffiti-covered and shadow-stained, ignored by the modern city. But to Ethan, it pulsed with something ancient. After everything, it still called to him, not with screams or whispers this time, but with silence, a silence that held memory. 3 days had passed since the ritual. Min was gone. The mirror had sealed itself, and the shop had returned to its sleepy rhythm, potions, herbs, the slow dance of incense. But Ethan had not returned to his former self. He no longer woke, gasping. He no longer feared looking in the mirror. Yet something inside him still listened, still waited. He stood before the wall, fingertips grazing the surface. "Why here?" Derek asked, leaning against the opposite alley wall. Ethan didn't answer right away. He stepped back and looked at the pattern. Faded ink and char, a circle burned into the bricks, almost imperceptible now. But he saw it, because he had seen it once before, on the night they ran. "This was the place," Ethan said softly, "where the ritual began in 1976. Derek furrowed his brow. "You mean the fire started here? I thought it was the warehouse." Ethan shook his head. The warehouse was the result. This was the origin. The mirror was only a conduit. The wall, it was the seal. Derek stepped closer. He'd stayed in Chinatown since the ritual, even though he said he'd leave. Something tethered him. Maybe guilt, maybe unfinished business. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "I want to remember all of it, not just what I saw, what I chose to forget." They brought Mei-Ling. She was quieter now. The ordeal had drained her, but in her eyes was something Ethan hadn't seen before. Relief. She carried a lacquered scroll. "This was found beneath the altar," she said, "after the mirror reformed. It's a binding prayer, ancient. It marks the wall as a soul boundary." "Meaning?" Derek asked. "Meaning souls trapped in unfinished death can anchor here, feed here, wait here." Ethan pointed to the center of the wall. "That's why the child ghosts kept returning. Not just Min. All of them." Mei-Ling nodded. "They weren't haunting the mirror. They were trying to escape the wall." That night, the 3 of them returned with offerings: rice, salt, 7 candles, and the 5 tokens now blackened from the ritual. Mei-Ling began the chant. The wind stirred. A low hum rose from the bricks themselves. Ethan stepped forward and placed his palm flat on the wall, and he was pulled in. Not physically. His body remained in the alley, but his mind, his soul, slipped across time. The world twisted. He stood in Chinatown, but older. Dirt roads, paper lanterns lit by flame, not wire. It was 1907, maybe earlier. A crowd gathered around the wall. In the center, a young girl stood, barefoot, trembling, surrounded by robed figures. They chanted in Cantonese, weaving sigils with blood and ash. A seal was drawn, a circle. The girl screamed. Ethan watched, helpless, as she was bound, not with rope, but with words. The ritual was never meant to protect. It was containment. The scene shifted again. Now it was 1925. The alley had changed. Another child stood crying at the wall. His shadow stretched long. He reached toward the bricks and vanished. Another shift, 1952, then 1976. Ethan saw himself, young, running past this very wall unaware. In all these years, the wall had fed on the same thing: forgotten children. Back in his body, Ethan staggered. Mei-Ling caught him. "What did you see?" he whispered. "The wall isn't cursed," he whispered. "It's hungry, and we've been feeding it for a century." Then it's time to starve it, Derek said. They prepared a new ritual, not to bind, but to release. Instead of trapping souls, they would invite them to speak, to choose. Mei-Ling took chalk and drew the original sigil in reverse, an unbinding circle. Ethan placed each of the 5 tokens at the points. Candles flared. "Speak your names," Mei-Ling called into the night. "You who were forgotten, you who were silenced. We are listening." At first, nothing. Then the wall shivered. Faces began to form. Dozens. Children of all ages. Transparent, flickering, and one by one they stepped into the circle. Ethan watched as each soul passed. Each whispered their name. Some wept, some smiled. All looked at him. Then came Min. She stood taller now, no longer the scared orphan, but something between child and guardian. "You did what many couldn't," she said. "You stayed. You listened. Now it's our turn." She turned to the wall. "We choose to leave." The wall cracked. A wind blew, not cold, but warm. Every candle flared high, then went out. The sigil glowed, then faded. The children were gone. Only silence remained. Later that night, Ethan sat alone in the alley. Derek had gone. Mei-Ling rested. Chinatown had returned to quiet, but this time the quiet was peace, not suppression. He touched the wall. It felt hollow, normal, a place, not a prison. He looked up at the stars, then down at the 5 tokens in his hand. They were cool now, inert. No more mirrors, no more screams. Just memory, and a promise kept. Tomorrow he would board a train, not to escape, but to carry the story. Not everyone got to remember, but he did. And so he would never let the wall whisper alone again. Ethan walked. The morning sun had not yet risen over San Francisco, but the streets of Chinatown were slowly waking. Lanterns swayed gently in the breeze, still lit from the night before. A street vendor lit a bundle of incense in front of his closed stall, bowing silently. But Ethan wasn't watching the streets. His gaze drifted toward the rooftops, the walls, the doorways, the spaces between things. Because those were the places where memory lived, and for the first time in decades, they felt light. He passed by the wall behind Zhang's remedies, the one that had once echoed with the cries of lost souls. Now, it was silent, just brick, just history. The chalk sigil had faded. The tokens were gone. The air was still. He smiled. "It's over." Inside the shop, Mei-Ling poured tea. She looked tired but peaceful. "You're really leaving," she said, not as a question. Ethan nodded. "I think the city deserves its silence back." "And what about you?" she asked. "What do you deserve?" He chuckled softly. "I used to think I didn't deserve anything, but now I think I deserve to remember." Mei-Ling poured a second cup. "You were always the rememberer. That's why it chose you. The mirror, the cycle." She shook her head. "No, them. All of them. The ones who stayed behind. The ones who never got a name." Ethan's hand tightened on the teacup. "I still see them," he whispered. "Even now. Not as ghosts, just as moments, in corners of alleys, in the sound of footsteps, in the pause between breaths." Mei-Ling nodded. "That means they're at peace, not gone, just remembered." Later that afternoon, Derek returned. He was different now, lighter. He'd shaved. His clothes were less rumpled. "You heading out today?" he asked. "Next train," Ethan said. "What about you?" "I'm staying. Turns out helping ghosts pass on makes for good karma. I opened a little shop near Portsmouth Square. Mei-Ling is helping me with the rights." Ethan smiled. "You found your calling." "And you found forgiveness," Derek said. "We're even." They shook hands, then hugged. "You'll write, right?" Derek asked. "No, Ethan said, "but I'll remember." Evening came. Ethan stood at the platform, a small suitcase at his feet. The train hissed, ready to depart. Passengers boarded slowly, but Ethan didn't move. He looked back once more, at the skyline, at the lanterns, at the city that had nearly devoured him, then saved him. "You okay?" a voice asked. He turned. A little girl stood nearby, no older than 8. Not Min, just a stranger. "Yeah," he said, smiling. "I'm just saying goodbye." She tilted her head. "To what?" He looked up at the sky. "To what I used to be." The train pulled away. 6 months later, Chinatown moved on. Tourists returned, shops reopened. But something had changed. Not visible, but felt. Like a storm had passed and left everything just a little clearer. Mei-Ling continued her work. She now ran a small temple space beside the apothecary. People came for healing, for remembrance, for the names of those they'd forgotten. Derek's spirit-cleansing business thrived, but more importantly, he never forgot to light incense each morning. For Min, for Ethan, for the others. One day he received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a manuscript, handwritten, thick. Its title, The Wall That Remembered. Derek smiled, and somewhere far from the city, Ethan sat beneath a tree, watching the wind move through the leaves. He had no mirror, no tokens, just memory. In his notebook were names, dozens of them, each written carefully, each remembered. And behind his smile was a promise to never let the silence return, because the dead don't ask for much. They only ask not to be forgotten, and Ethan, the rememberer, would never forget.